The shocking revelation of the prostitute who betrayed Jericho and changed Israel's fate. Few knew what truly happened that night in Jericho. The moon hung low, casting eerie shadows upon the ancient stone walls. Each heartbeat echoed with the tension of a city on edge. Rumors swirled like the dust stirred by anxious feet. Rahab, known to many as the harlot, stood at the center of it all. She was a woman of contradictions, a life intertwined with sin yet harboring secrets that could turn the world upside down. The Israelites were closing in, their whispers of conquest sending ripples through the streets. The people of Jericho trembled, fear clinging to them like the heavy air before a storm. Rahab watched from her window, her heart racing. Could she be both traitor and savior? Would her choice seal her fate, or would it be the key to her salvation? In the heart of the night, two men, disguised as travelers, appeared at her door. Her instincts screamed. Who were they? Were they spies sent by the enemy, or did they belong to the very people she had to decide between? Time froze as she weighed her options. The men's eyes flashed with urgency, drawing her in like a moth to a flame. A promise of freedom lay ahead, yet the cost was staggering. Jericho's walls stood tall, but what of the walls within her heart? History whispered the significance of choices made in moments of desperation. The land was promised, the people restless, and an unexpected savior emerged from the shadows of the streets. Rahab clutched the scarlet cord that hung in her window, a symbol of both her betrayal and hope. What lay beyond the night? Would her gamble pay off, or lead to destruction? The air thickened as secrets swirled. Who would believe a woman like her? The city's judgment loomed like the sword of Damocles. And yet, in that fateful moment, Rahab made her choice, stepping into the unknown with trembling hands and a racing heart. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As dawn broke over the horizon, the pale light seeped into the dim corners of Rahab's dwelling, illuminating the worn wooden beams and casting long shadows that danced like her swirling thoughts. Beneath the fragile quiet of the early morning, the echo of distant horns and scattered murmurs from Jericho's townsfolk hinted at an awakening. A day that would be unlike any other. Rahab stood by her window, the scarlet cord still clutched in her hand, its texture rough against her calloused palm. Memories tumbled through her mind, children laughing in the streets, merchants shouting their wares, and the nightly echoes of her past life. She was a woman marked by the choices of yesterday, yet here she was, poised on the threshold of something extraordinary. She could hear the whispers of the spies' promises linger in her mind, urging her to act. What would the Almighty think of her choices? Rahab, a Canaanite woman steeped in the shadows of moral ambiguity, now found herself intertwined with the destiny of Israel. She felt a stirring within her, a flicker of faith igniting where fear once ruled. Did she possess the strength to transform her life, to embody the hope she saw in the two men who had sought refuge in her home? The sun climbed steadily, bathing the walls of Jericho in golden light, and still, tension hung thick in the air. The elders of the city gathered near the gates, their voices a low rumble, plotting their defenses against the encroaching Israelites. They spoke of curses and blessings, of histories woven into the very soil they stood upon. Yet here was Rahab, a woman seen as the bottom of the social pyramid, daring to believe in a hope that could topple empires that in her heart. Another question stirred. Would they accept her? The Israelites, people defined by their covenant with God, may never consider extending grace to someone who bore the mark of sin. Could she be woven into their story without being swept away in judgment? As the day grew warmer, she understood the weight of her scarlet cord. It was no mere ribbon but a lifeline for her family. If they chose to step into the unknown alongside her, would they share the same salvation? As she considered the risks, Fear crept closer, whispering doubts into her ear, painting pictures of failure and rejection. Yet, the thought of inaction clawed more fiercely at her heart. She could not stand idle while the wheels of fate turned. With every fiber of her being, she resolved to step beyond her confines. Rahab cast her gaze out into the approaching chaos of history that would remember her not simply for her past, but for the choice she was about to make. Should I offer my family the chance to escape with me? She pondered, heart racing at the thought. What if they refuse? Will I bear the burden of their fate alongside my own? As she wrestled with the decisions ahead, an unshakable realization washed over her. Hope was often born in places deemed hopeless. And perhaps, like the Israelites marching towards their promise, she was destined to find a new identity. The sound of marching feet grew louder, and the question hung over her like the weight of the heavens. Would the act of declaring her faith in the face of potential hostility birth her true salvation, or would it shatter whatever future she dared to imagine? Would tradition's chains bind her, or would she wear them like a warrior's armor? In that pivotal moment, with the city of Jericho pulsating with life and impending doom, one question lingered. Could a single act of courage change the course of destiny for not just one, but many? The sun's ascent promised a new chapter, yet for Rahab, each moment trembled with uncertainty. She paced the modest confines of her home, the sounds of Jericho growing more frantic. Children scampered through the streets, their giggles a sharp contrast to her somber resolve. Outside, the townsfolk busied themselves, preparing for what could only be presumed as an inevitable confrontation. Yet within her, a different preparation brewed, one of liberation and hope. What had begun as a mere saving of lives was transforming into something profound. Specters of her past whispered insidiously, reminding her of the life she inherited, inscribed on the walls of her heart. How can a woman like me ever be considered worthy? She mused, touching the coarse fabric of the cord once more. A bridge had formed between her and the Israelites, but they had yet to cross it together later that day. As shadows lengthened and the skies deepened into evening, Rahab heard the soft, urgent knocks upon her door. It was her family. Their faces bore the weight of disbelief. "You've always been one to divert from the norm," her brother said, his voice laced with equal parts incredulity and curiosity. "But this, do you really believe it will work?" Her answer was not immediate. She could sense their reluctance, the binds of tradition tightly wrapped around them. "I do believe," she replied, her voice steady. "But faith is not simply the belief in what might happen. It is the courage to act even when the path isn't clear." They exchanged glances steeped in doubt and silent judgment, yet Rahab pressed on. "The two spies came to me, assured me of salvation. If we are brave enough to grasp this chance, our lives might transform into the stories we cherished in whispered dreams." As she spoke, a flicker of something ignited in her brother's eyes, a spark of possibility. The hours unfolded into an enigmatic dance of hope and fear, and soon the evening cloaked Jericho in shadows, as a quiet urgency began to rise. The city outside brimmed with tension as commander after commander rallied their troops, their voices echoing in the distance like the predestined thunder before a storm. But Rahab clung to her light. She knew that those who stood with her at the threshold of change, the ones she loved most, remained skeptical. Did they sense the immensity of the moment, or were they entrapped by the chains of complacency? As stars peppered the sky, the silence grew heavy with the gravity of their choice. What would we lose if we did not act? She implored her family, and what could we gain if we seized this uncertain path? In the depths of the night, as the moonlight illuminated the scarlet cord she intended to hang from her window, she made a solemn vow. The cord would signify more than a mere escape. It would be a symbol of their unity and the sacrifice that accompanied their journey into the unknown. It would tether them to the promise of a new beginning, the mercy they might discover in embracing faith. Just when Rahab felt conviction surge through her veins, an unsettling thought arose. Was she trying to simply flee her past, or was she truly daring to rewrite her destiny? Could one decision unravel threads woven tightly through generations of shame? She longed to shed the skin that had previously defined her, but doubt nipped at her heels. Her family still hesitated, caught in the tension between their identity as Canaanites and the beckoning call of a radical shift. Perhaps the true bravery lies in acknowledging the risk, she whispered, half to herself. Could we be willing enough to let go of what we think we know in order to grasp something greater? As the hour grew late and an uneasy hush enveloped Jericho, Rahab resolved to hang the cord, a tangible promise that their lives would pivot. It was a call to her family and a quiet challenge to her own spirit. In that moment amid the impending storm, unity began to blossom in her heart. But one fundamental question endured. How can one thread of hope woven into the fabric of their reality potentially unravel the legacy of fear and doubt, instilled for generations? The night crept on, enveloping Jericho in an oppressive stillness, as if the city itself held its breath, anticipating some unseen climax. Rahab's heart pulsed with the energy of her conviction, yet her thoughts danced amid the tension that cloaked her family. They gathered close, their forms indistinct in the flickering candlelight, and through their uncertainty, she felt both warmth and chill, a spectrum of loyalty and trepidation. Did we really hear the words of the Lord? Whispered her sister, her vulnerability laid bare. Is our safety worth the weight of betrayal? Betrayal is a word heavy with consequence. Rahab responded gently, seated before them. But consider what we face if we remain in this city. Would staying be the greater betrayal? The sheer audacity of her thoughts sent ripples through her mind. How easily the notion of loyalty could addict them to fear, chaining them to the very identity they sought to escape. Her family fell silent then, weighed by the gravity of her question. The shadows flickered in the corners of the room, as if the walls themselves were engaged in a discourse with their built-in doubts. Rahab rose, crossing to the window where the braided cord hung suspended in the moonlight, seeming to pulse with its quiet promise. Look, she said, pointing toward the distant hills that loomed over Jericho. Beyond is a land ripe with promise. The Israelites have been assured by God that He will deliver them to that land. Are we not worthy of such a promise? Yet her brother lingered in the draping silence. And if this does not yield salvation, will we live with the shame? Shame can only spill its poison if we allow it to flow unchecked. I say we can convert our shame into a story of triumph. Rahab's voice broke, infused with hope and conviction. Imagine telling our children of the time we stood upon a shameless legacy yet dared to walk into history. The fire in her heart was met with embers of encouragement, igniting a slow unveiling of their willingness to follow. They began to whisper to each other, searching for the truth in Rahab's fervor, her desire to reshape their destiny entangled with her own. Doubt still lingered among them, coiling tightly around their resolve. Perhaps, her brother finally ventured, your faith carries heavier weight than our past. His admission filled the room with a sense of awakening. He reached out and took her hand, an unspoken pact under the watchful moon. We slip too easily into hopelessness, Rahab thought, when courage calls for each heart to rise. With renewed determination, she hung the scarlet cord in the window. The simple act felt monumental, a line drawn between the life they knew and a fate whispered in the winds of change. The night deepened, pregnant with the echoes of their decision. Yet outside, the distant rumble of the approaching march thrummed through the ground, resonating the tension of destiny. As she and her family retreated from the window, concealment found them once more, shrouded in the safety of darkness. But as they huddled together, an unfamiliar emotion seized Rahab. Anticipation mingled with fear. An unsettling realization crept into her thoughts. What if we are still unworthy, no matter how fervently we believe? She pondered. Does faith truly bridge the chasm of our past, or merely disguise the truths we carry in our hearts? With each thought, the unraveling of her identity as a Canaanite intertwined with the new threads she was weaving through faith and hope. Her battle was as much against Jericho as it was against herself, the very label she sought to shed weighing down upon her spirit. In the fathomless depths of her heart, as she braced for the dawn, the burning question lingered. Can one bold act redefine the very essence of who we are, or will the shadows of our past forever dictate the choices we make? As dawn began to stretch its golden fingers across the horizon, Rahab's heart thrummed a different rhythm, suffused with clarity and turmoil alike. The world outside the window was awakening to the haunting sounds of hope mingling with the harsh cries of geese and the distant laughter of children. Jericho, ever steadfast and resolute, stood as a testament to the fragility of fate. The sun cast a shimmering glow upon Rahab's family as they embraced the newfound strength arising from their shared resolve. But in the midst of their burgeoning courage, doubt curled around leftover remnants of fear. Rahab approached her mother, whose weathered hands bore the marks of a lifetime spent in survival. "Mother," Rahab began, her voice a gentle whisper to break the morning stillness, "what burdens do we inherit from our past, and how do we shed them as we seek to step into the light?" Her mother's eyes remained steadfastly focused on the ground, tracing familiar paths in the earth, as though seeking the answers in the soil itself. "We inherit the weight of our choices, my daughter," she replied finally, her voice laced with both wisdom and resignation. "But every new dawn offers us a chance to carry a different burden, should we choose to walk a path anew." This revelation swirled within Rahab, igniting a flicker of understanding. She turned back toward her siblings, who were now entangled in discussion, their expressions reflecting something profound, the nascent understanding that their pasts need not dictate their futures. Hope was slowly diffusing through the air like the sweet scent of jasmine, filling their space with an intoxicating promise. The hours passed slowly, their anticipation growing thick as they kept watch at the window, awaiting the coming of the warriors from a land unknown. Rahab's heart drummed a steady beat of resolve as she peered into the distance, her mind tangentially reflecting on the stories of the Israelites that had flourished in whispers through the marketplace. It was a narrative woven with threads of hardship and miraculous deliverance from bondage. Yet an unsettling thought pierced through her fervor. Would they, the outsiders, truly be embraced by their God? Could the same divine hand that had shielded Israel extend its grace to someone like her? Terror danced at the edge of her anticipation, reminding her of past transgressions, the choices that had defined her life. "Even if we are granted refuge," she mused, "how do we reconcile the desolation of our identities with the grace of this invitation? Will we emerge anew, or simply wear a facade of righteousness, cloaked in the old garments of our former selves?" The community outside continued to bustle, oblivious to her inner turmoil, while Rahab found herself paralleling the Israelites' own journey, a quest for belonging, for acceptance in the sight of God and mankind. Her heart panged with longing. She envisioned the embrace of a future where her perceived sins became conduits of strength rather than burdens of shame. As the sun began its ascent, illuminating the hills with a golden hue, the sound of a distant trumpet reached her ears. It was both a herald and an omen, a clarion call embedded in the very fabric of her destiny. How unthinkable that the very barriers she had known might crumble beneath such a sight. She turned again to her family, their silhouettes framed by the warm light spilling across the room. "We must prepare ourselves, for the moment has arrived. When they come, we shall not just be hiding. We will be declaring our faith, welcoming what is to come." Her brother, emboldened by her leadership, nodded and said, "And with our declaration we redefine our histories. We may have been born into a city of sin, but we shall choose to be reborn in faith." Yet, as the horn echoed through Jericho, reverberating between the walls that had kept her confined for so long, Rahab's soul wrestled with the truth. What if redemption is not a straight path? She wondered, is it possible for our voices to sing a new anthem while still carrying our past within us? As the vibrations of the trumpet filled her ears, the weight of impending change loomed heavy yet hopeful, urging them toward the threshold of transformation. Would they step forward into the unknown, ready to embrace something entirely new while grappling with the familiar echoes of their history? Would her act of courage be enough to shift the course of not only her life but the very fate of her family and possibly even Israel? As the echoes of the trumpet faded into the morning air, Rahab stood poised, a vessel filled with both dread and expectation. The vibrant hues of dawn reflected the turmoil within her soul. She could feel the pulse of the city entwining with her heartbeat, an acknowledgement that they were all players in a cosmic drama far beyond their understanding. "Will they come today?" her sister asked, a tremor of excitement threading through her voice. The children outside laughed and played, their innocence a stark contrast to the heavy anticipation that lay upon Rahab's heart. Yet, deep inside, she could sense that today was different. today held the possibility of miracles, transformations woven into the fabric of history. Hope, Rahab murmured, is a restless spirit. She turned her gaze back to the distant hills, where the azure sky met the earth in a soft embrace. She thought of the spies who had entered her home under the cover of night, carrying tales of a God whose might echoed through the ages. She had become a part of their story, an unlikely stitch in the tapestry of a people set on reclaiming their destiny. As the sun climbed higher, illuminating Jericho's fortified walls, Rahab felt the weight of her choices pressing against her shoulders like an anchor. Each act of defiance against her community pressed against her conscience. How could she be a beacon of hope when her history was marred by shame? Would the shoes of righteousness ever fit her weary feet? She found herself reflecting on the tales she had absorbed from the merchants in the streets, stories of wanderers protected by grace, of fearless leaders marching forward into the unknown. The tales ignited a fertile longing in her spirit, an urge to be woven into a different narrative, to claim her identity as not just a woman of Jericho, but as a believer in the greater story of God's promise. What will the others think if our sanctuary becomes the very heart of the battle? Her mother's words rang in her mind. Is it wise to stand in the eye of the storm? She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, tasting the essence of conviction woven through her uncertainty. Perhaps, Rahab whispered, it is not our actions that define us, but the intentions of our hearts. She layered her thoughts beneath a veil of prayer, surrendering her fears to a God who saw the worth hidden in the shadows of her past. As the sun reached its zenith, a hush fell over the marketplace, the laughter of children silenced as the people of Jericho turned their eyes toward the horizon. Shadows formed under the weight of rigid anticipation, and every heart seemed to beat in synchrony with the pulse of impending change. Suddenly, a figure emerged, a solitary man, cloaked in determination. The muted tones of his garb became vibrant as he drew closer. Rahab recognized him. It was one of the spies who had clung to her promise of safety, his spirit unwavering despite the heaviness that surrounded them. The silence deepened, wrapping around them like a shroud. Rahab, he called out, his voice steady against the rising tide of panic. The time has come. The Lord bids us to move. Every fiber of her being urged her to take this leap, to seize the moment of divine invitation. Yet, doubt nestled in the crevices of her heart. What if, in this act, I lose everything? My family? My place in this world? God's grace is unfathomable, he assured her, his eyes alight with unwavering belief. In choosing faith over fear, you shall find more than you ever knew you sought. Torn between the comfort of her past and the uncertainty of what lay ahead, Rahab's voice trembled. What does it mean to forsake all that I have known in pursuit of something different? As anticipation mounted, she felt the weight of generations holding their breath, their hopes entwined with her own. The thought lingered in the air, both a challenge and a call to arms. Could she, a woman with a marred reputation, become the bridge for a new identity, a beacon amidst ruins? With a deep breath, she stepped forward, placing one foot before the other. The walls of Jericho no longer felt stifling. Instead, they resonated with possibility. Could the burden of her past become a foundation for her faith? As she took that step into the unknown, a question hung in the balance. Was she ready to embrace not just the promise of a new world, but the terrifying freedom that comes with it? As Rahab took that first tentative step away from the familiarity of Jericho, an electric charge danced through the air, filling the space between what was and what could be. The landscape, once a canvas of division, now blurred, merging shadows with lights yet unseen. Each footfall became a silent declaration, a testament of courage woven with faith, a pledge to take hold of the uncertain gift the Almighty offered. The spy's steady gaze offered reassurance amid swirling emotions, a reminder that she was no longer acting alone. Come, he beckoned softly, urging her forward. She glanced back at the streets she had known, rich with the complexities of love and lost memories that both anchored and chained her. With a heart heavy yet hopeful, she steeled her resolve as they began this sacred quest. The voice of her mother echoed faintly in her mind. What will become of our family? The question loomed like a specter, a reminder of all she risked in this leap of faith. But glimmers of faith flickered in her thoughts. She could feel the presence of something greater, a power that had witnessed every hardship she endured, every error that painted her existence. Could her frail heart bear the burden of flourishing hope if wrapped in unyielding love? As they journeyed into the wilderness, the terrain transformed, rolling hills casting shadows over their path, a reflection of the contradictions within her soul. Each step echoed with her silent prayer for guidance, for clarity to see the fruits of her choice. Onward they pressed, and with each moment, Rahab felt the weight of her past lifting, as if to say, what was does not define what can be. Soon they arrived at a secluded clearing, blanketed with the fragrance of wildflowers, where a simple altar stood amidst the overgrown grass, a remnant of worship and sacrifice. It was here that the spy knelt down, gesturing for her to join him. Let us seek a deeper understanding of our purpose in this meeting between worlds, he suggested, his eyes flashing with fervor. Rahab knelt beside him, her heart racing with both apprehension and anticipation. What words do we speak that might echo through the heavens? She whispered, casting her gaze up at the vast expanse, where the clouds billowed like whispers unspoken, waiting to be revealed as they prayed. A stirring wind swirled around them, breathing life into their words. Rahab felt a shift in the air, a revelation unfolding just beyond her comprehension, as if creation itself leaned in to listen. Are we but pawns in a greater plan? She wondered, the thought weaving through her mind like silver thread in a tapestry. Will our efforts sow seeds of change that transcend time? At that moment, she felt a pulsing invitation to be part of something monumental, a transaction beyond her frail understanding. What if these choices altered the trajectory of not only her life but the very fabric of the people she sought to protect? Could hope found in a heart deemed unworthy resonate far beyond her personal narrative? After their prayer, the spy stood, his presence a solid anchor amidst the uncertainties. We must prepare, he said, a new determination coloring his tone. Your home must serve as a sanctuary, a refuge of divine protection amidst the storm that is to come. Fear twisted within her, consuming her thoughts. Am I capable of sheltering both my family and righteousness? She questioned, the harsh reality of her dual existence mirroring the fractured landscape surrounding her. Where does my loyalty lie when the tide turns? Remember, he replied softly, even the broken can usher in the miraculous. Your faith is the shield that protects you, and the heart that desires change holds the power to shift destinies. His words resonated like the striking of a bell, leaving echoes of possibility lingering in the air. With the sun dipping low, casting golden rays through the trees, Rahab contemplated the weight of her decisions that lay ahead. Could she truly bridge the void that separated who she was from who she yearned to be? As she looked deep within, she realized that what she craved most was to be a vessel of strength and safety, a testament to God's grace woven in the fabric of her being. But as shadows merged with night's embrace, Rahab was left pondering a question that gnawed at her spirit. Was it enough to surrender to faith, or did she also need to confront the fierce storm of her fears, embracing the unknown that lay ahead with unwavering resolve? The stillness of the night enveloped Rahab and the spy, wrapping them in a blanket of uncertainty, as if the very world paused to breathe before the unfolding of destiny. The stars above twinkled with an ancient curiosity, their light shimmering like countless hopes suspended in time. Should she embrace this emerging role that destiny had woven for her? She wondered, or would the weight of her past prove too much for the future she desired? Tell me, she urged the spy, the words tumbling from her lips, how does one bear the burden of betrayal against one's own city for a promise of salvation? The query hung thick in the air, heavy with both hesitation and yearning. The spy took a deep breath, his expression thoughtful. Betrayal, dear Rahab, is a matter of perspective. Sometimes the deepest loyalty is found not where one has always been, but where one is heading. You seek refuge not only for yourself, but for those you love amidst a tumultuous tide. Your heart knows its home, and it knows the price of clinging to what no longer serves your spirit's flight. As Rahab pondered his words, the moon emerged, casting an ethereal glow that bathed the clearing in light. Shadows danced playfully among the trees, echoing the tumult within her heart. But what if the shadows of Jericho follow me? What if I am marked by the choices I Medea dishonored path cloaked with betrayal? The true mark, Rahab, he responded, his voice gentle yet firm, is how you choose to rewrite your story. The past may whisper its regrets, but it need not be the architect of your future. With every small act of faith, you must seek to transform those shadows into lessons that illuminate the way. A profound silence settled between them, a moment threaded with inspiration and fear alike. Rahab pondered the wisdom of his words, running her fingers through the blades of grass beneath her. What did it truly mean to act with faith? She recalled the stories she had heard as a child, tales of the God who freed captives, the one who redeemed lives from the depths of despair. Could that same God extend the hand of redemption toward her, against the backdrop of her choices? Rising to her feet, she cast her gaze towards the horizon, where the silhouette of Jericho loomed like a specter. It felt daunting to think of returning, a place tangled with her identity. Yet she buzzed with the fierce stirrings of hope, ready to embrace the future shrouded in uncertainty. In that case, she murmured, what do I grant in return for this grace? What must my heart offer to pave the way to be counted among the faithful? The spy turned to her, his eyes bright with conviction. Courage and truth, that is your offering, Rahab. Each step you take, shielded in the knowledge of your worth, draws a line in the sand between what you were and who you will become. Embrace your transformation and let faith manifest through your actions. As she let his words settle, bolstered by newfound wisdom, Rahab felt her spirit swell with a sense of purpose. But lingering doubts tugged at her mind. Could her commitment be enough to shield her family from the pain that encircled them like a tempest? In the embrace of the night sky, she found herself at the crossroads of trust and trepidation, vacillating on the precipice of her decision. Will the heartache of my past extinguish the flame of my resolve, or will it fuel the light that guides my family toward safety? She mused aloud, the question echoing solemnly in the sacred stillness. What if the real battle lay not in the walls of Jericho but within her, as she faced the churning tides of her fears and aspirations? As Rahab confronted her tormented past, she sensed a greater truth lingering in the shadows. Could the ultimate journey be piecing together the remnants of her soul-merging courage with hope, healing with commitment until she stood as a beacon of light for her family amidst the encroaching darkness? As the dawn approached, the faint light of morning disheartened the stars, bidding them a reluctant farewell. In the rising glow, Rahab stood resolute, her heart still grappling with the weight of her choices. The spy had departed to relay her plea, and now, she was left alone with the echo of possibilities. The streets of Jericho began to awaken, the murmur of life stirring within the stones that had witnessed so much strife. Children's laughter and the voices of mothers blended into a symphony of normalcy. Yet within Rahab, a discordant note played. Each sound felt like a tether pulling her back toward a life filled with the very fabric of her former self, one that she yearned to escape yet could not deny. In her thoughts, yesterday's shadows loomed, whispering of infamy, of decisions made in desperation that now bordered on treachery. She wandered to the balcony overlooking the city, taking in the sight of the high walls that protected her people but also encapsulated their fate. The air was thick with the scent of clay and dust, reminders of both her kin and her struggle. Deep within her, a voice sparked, the God she had heard stories of, who resided in the tales of the assembly of Israelites, the exalted one of heaven and earth. Could you really be with me in this now? She spoke softly into the breeze, the echo of her heart presenting itself as a question. If you are there, what do you ask of me? Closing her eyes, she inhaled deeply. Amidst the uncertainty, she sought a sign, a moment to ground herself in the weight of a new beginning. Would the stories she cherished as a child become a tether to hope or merely a reminder of all that was shunned? Before she could ponder further, a passerby, a merchant laden with goods, caught her attention. He was unusually somber, his countenance betraying burdens that felt heavier than the wares he carried. Rahab motioned for him to stay, sensing the shadow of grief within him. Tell me, friend, she implored, what troubles you so? Nothing should weigh so heavily as we greet the dawn together. He halted, peering into her eyes with a mixture of surprise and appreciation. The very heart of our city trembles, Rahab. Rumors whisper of a coming army of force that would lay siege to our walls, driving all into despair. Fewer oak trees have lined the walls as laborers have worked less to fortify against a tide we cannot prevent. There are whispers outside these bounds that speak of a mysterious power surrounding those who approach us. Her heart raced, thrumming with the speed of revelation. Was this the sign she sought, a moment dripping with prophecy that cast long shadows ahead? What if, she answered, her voice barely contained, what if this was not an end but an invitation to redefine what is to come? The merchant glanced at her, skepticism shading his eyes, but she pressed on, words spiraling from the depths of her very soul. Perhaps it is not the walls that protect us, but our faith in the possibility of what lies beyond them. The very promise of a new life beckons us to rise from the ashes of our past. He lowered his head, the weight of her words sparking a flicker of hope within him. But how can we trust in that which we cannot see? Each step we take, Rahab replied earnestly, is a testimony of our courage. If I, a woman marked by my choices, can seek deliverance, then so too can we all seek freedom from the burdens that constrain us. We cannot muster the strength if we remain cloaked in the comfort of the familiar. As dawn fully engulfed the city, painting the world in warm hues, Rahab felt compelled to act. She turned to the man and those who may still be listening, her voice rising above the morning chorus. Let us gather our families. Let us write a new narrative, one forged in unity and faith, where Jericho is not just a city of walls but a resilient fabric woven through love and strength. But even as she spoke, a doubt crept into her mind, a question rattling like a distant drum. Would her past, would the disdain she had faced, prevent others from joining her? Could she rally a city poised on the brink of overwhelming fear to embrace the unknown that she felt so vividly within? As she settled back into the tumult of her thoughts, a deeper mystery lingered. Was Jericho destined to fall not merely to an invading force, but to the revelation that even the most steadfast walls could buckle under the weight of hope? Would their choice to believe act as the true turning point, altering the fate of a city and a people forever? As the sun ascended into the azure sky, bathing Jericho in warmth, Rahab's heart brimmed with both trepidation and resolve. The morning carried with it whispers of change, a fresh breeze laden with the promise of new beginnings and untold futures. The shadows of her past lingered, but so did the embers of hope, flickering courageously within her spirit. Today, she felt, could mark the dawn of a transformation not just for her, but for her family and perhaps all of Jericho. Gathering her family around the meager table, Rahab's voice rose with the urgency of a woman reborn. We are not merely spectators in this hour of reckoning. We are bearers of a new story, she proclaimed, locking eyes with each of her family members, urging them to hear her call. We stand before the veil of destiny, ready to step beyond the walls that have unknowingly confined us. Her brother, still skeptical yet swayed by her passion, leaned in. But how can we trust in such uncertain promises? What reason do we have to believe that the outcome will not lead us to our ruin? Rahab felt the weight of his words as they clutched at the frayed edges of her own fear. Because sometimes, she replied softly, it is in the crumbling of walls that we discover the depths of our strength. The Israelites are coming, not just as conquerors but as a testament to God's promise of deliverance. Their journey is intertwined with ours, a tapestry where every thread matters, even the dark ones. The murmurs around the table stilled, each family member grasping the weight of her words, the flicker of possibility igniting within their hearts. A veil of anxious anticipation settled among them, as the gravity of their choices hovered in the air like a sacred incantation. Later that day, Rahab climbed the narrow stairs to her window, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She hung the scarlet cord outside, its presence bold against the stark stone. It was not merely a signal of refuge. It was an act of defiance and faith, a beacon for those who would choose to trust in her vision for a new beginning. As time unfolded slowly, the echo of marching feet reverberated through the ground. Her family clutched each other, hearts pounding in harmony with the rhythm of fate. Rahab stepped to the window, drawing in a steadying breath as she beheld the silhouette of the Israelite army approaching. They were no longer distant figures but harbingers of hope, clad in the promise of the Almighty. A hush descended over Jericho as the stark reality of their circumstance settled in. For Rahab, this was not merely the end of her old life but the birth of something extraordinary. A testament to the power of faith, the relentless pursuit of redemption, and the courage to embrace the unknown as the march of destiny unfolded. Rahab called out to her family, pulling them close as they braced for the impending clash between the world they knew and the promise of deliverance. "We are ready to bear witness," she urged, fingers tightening around the cord that linked her past to a hopeful future. Then came the thunderous sound of the trumpets, an anthem of declaration that pierced the heavy air around them. The Israelites began to shout, their voices rising to envelop the walls of Jericho, shaking the ground beneath her and igniting a fervor in the very hearts of her family. It was a sound that resonated with truth, igniting the courage that lay dormant as the walls began to tremble, cracks spiderwebbed where once stood formidable barriers, isolating them from the promise of salvation. It was a miracle bound in grief, a transformation woven through fear, and Rahab realized the greatest truth of all. It was not the walls that defined their fate, but the bond of faith that united them. "Now," she whispered, "the true journey unveils itself." In that sweeping moment, as the world turned and the dust settled, Rahab felt not just the weight of loss but the wings of freedom unfurling within. They were being called into the presence of something greater, each heartbeat an affirmation of the weight of their shared history, and every breath a testament to the power of belief. That as the last stones crumbled and the air filled with dust, the Israelites surged forward, guided by something more than mere conquest. They were propelled by a divine mission intertwined with Rahab's act of courage. For amid the chaos, she would choose not to linger in the shadows of her past but to rise as a symbol of hope, a woman who had turned betrayal to sanctuary, who had transformed fear into faith in the aftermath. As the dust settled and silence reclaimed its space, Rahab stepped forward, tethering herself to the very foundation of what would become her new legacy. As she turned from the ruins of Jericho, Rahab proclaimed with unwavering strength, "We are not defined by our beginnings but by every choice we make in the name of hope." And with that proclamation, not only her life but the very future of Israel echoed through history. In moments of doubt, let it be remembered, every scar of the past can blossom into the seeds of tomorrow, and it is in the act of faith that we discover the depth of our worth, the light that can pierce even the darkest of nights.